Hello, and welcome to the Chatterbox Letters podcast. Right now, today, I'm holding my microphone because I just set up my new table, but I can't hook my podcast to it. So I have to hold my microphone as I broadcast today. I'm going to be reading my very large chatter-like letter to my listeners. This book, aka Chatter Letter, is called Holes. I hope you will enjoy as I read Holes in audio format. I will be reading chapter by chapter so it seems interesting as you are curious to know the whole story at its entirety. Introducing Holes by Louis Sachar. I will be reading chapter 21. All right, let me go ahead and get chapter 21 straight here. All right, bear with me as I get chapter 21. All right, chapter 21. All right, here it goes. It was a long walk back to his hole. Stanley looked out through the haze of heat and dirt at the other boys lowering and raising their shovels. Group D was the farthest away. He realized that once again he would be digging long after everyone has quit. He hoped he'd finish before Mr. Sir recovered. He didn't want to be out there alone with Mr. Sir. He won't die, the warden had said. Unfortunately for you, walking across the desolate wasteland, Stanley thought about his great-grandfather. Not the pig stealer, but the pig stealer's son, the one who was robbed by kissing Kate Barlow. He tried to imagine how he must have felt after kissing Kate had left him stranded in the desert. It probably wasn't a whole lot different from the way he was feeling now. Kate Barlow had left his great-grandfather to face the hot, barren desert. The warden had left Stanley to face Mr. Sir. Somehow his great-grandfather had survived for 17 days before he was rescued by a couple of rattlesnake hunters. He was insane when they found him. When he was asked how he had lived so long, he said he found refuge on God's thumb. He spent nearly a month in the hospital. He ended up marrying one of his nurses. Nobody ever knew what he meant by God's thumb, including himself. Stanley heard a twitching sound. He stopped in mid-step with one foot still in the air. A rattlesnake lay coiled beneath his foot. His tail was pointed upward, rattling. Stanley backward, his left leg away. Then he turned and ran. The rattlesnake didn't chase after him. It had rattled its tail to warn him to stay away. "Thanks for the warning," Stanley whispered as his heart pounded. The rattlesnake would be a lot more dangerous if he didn't have a rattle. "Hey, caveman," called Armpit. "You still alive?" "What the warden say?" asked Gasseray. "What you tell her?" asked Magnet. I told her I stole the seeds, said Stanley. Good going, said Magnet. What'd she do? Asked Zigzag. Stanley shrugged one shoulder. Nothing. She got mad at Mr. Sir for bothering her. He didn't feel like going into details. If he didn't talk about it, then it maybe didn't happen. Next page. All right. He went over to his hole, and to surprise it was nearly finished. He stared at it, amazed. It didn't make sense, or perhaps it didn't. He smiled, since it had taken the blame for the sunflower seeds he realized the other boys had dug his hole for him. Excuse me. Hey, thanks, he said. Don't look at me, said X-Ray. Confused, Stanley looked around from Magnet to Armpit to Zigzag to Squid. None of them took credit for it. He turned to Zero, who had been quiet digging his hole since Stanley returned. Zero's hole was smaller than the others. That was quite a short chapter. I had a little fun reading that chapter. You know, I didn't have any more problems out of Zigzag and the whole gang. It just was a very short chapter. And it wasn't hard at all to hold my microphone, being that I couldn't hook it up earlier. But here's what I want everybody to do. Like, share, subscribe to my podcast. Hit that notification button to know when I go live. Ring that bell for updates on my podcast. If you have a chatter letter that you would like to have read on my broadcast to my podcast, please send your chatter letter to the Chatterbox Letters Podcast, Post Office Box 5556, Lakeland, Florida 33807. You can write whatever you want to write about in your chatter letter. Please keep your letters clean, your words clear and discreet. Please, everybody, do not hesitate to send your letters to my podcast. Please always procrastinate and send me your letters today.